This is update for June 15, 2023, day 477 of the war, and of the date update. Also catch up for June 14. So I'm going to start today with strategic developments, and then we're going to discuss, I can say at this point, failed Ukrainian offensive or attempt to launch offensive. But we'll discuss it later once we get there. So let's just first look what's going on in the US. There's new data came out, and so this is borrowing by the banks in the US from Federal Reserve, and as you can see, the situation is sort of kind of remaining more or less the same, right? So it's just not getting better, not getting worse. So as I said in the past, it's sort of in remission, under control. It's not true under control, but I probably didn't use the right word. It's more of like, okay, it's burning down there, but it's sort of not terribly visible to outside. But the sign that the flames kind of may go up pretty soon is actually interest rate charged for this bank. I forgot what's the facility, basically bank bailout facility. So as you can see, the interest rate reached all-time high. This is not what you would expect if things really, as I said, under control and getting better. This initial sign of future problems that we may see then increase in the borrowing down later. So basically this looks like more like a leading indicator of what's sort of to come later, but that I don't know at what level it will turn this situation into more acute. But there is very clear that things are not quiet. In addition, US Federal Reserve paused because there are some signs that there is a weakening in US labor market. And this is just general, like, sort of bureaucratic sort of game, I guess, in the Federal Reserve, where they don't want to be blamed that they tightened too much and they created, unemployment just for political reasons. So they paused and hope to say later, okay, well, we did pause, we did what we're supposed to do to make sure it doesn't happen, but somehow it happened. Act of nature out of our control. But basically, this is more sort of political situation, political game, and the labor market is indeed softening in the US. It's at very, very early stages, not anywhere sort of, the imminent, big, huge problem coming. Really, as Federal Reserve says, moving a little bit more into balance with the demand for labor in the US. However, consumer sentiment in the US is going in the negative direction. There is, I think it's called Ipsos consumer sentiment measurement. So it went from 52 to 49. The most important is a trend. It's a negative direction. Then in US, the industrial production is barely changing. It's a 0.23% increase year on year, so essentially it's nothing. And manufacturing, which is part of industrial production, is up only 0.1%. And even capacity utilization in industrial even slightly went down to 79.6. So basically, there is this, story about the industrial renaissance in the US. Is actually, this story is not actually true. There is no industrial renaissance in the US for sure. However, there is very clear deindustrialization happening in the UK. The industrial by the way, I just want to explain. So industrial production, it includes utilities, or basically electricity production, mining, and actual manufacturing. So sort of three components. So industrial is more comprehensive, I guess I would say. So industrial in the UK down 1.9% year on year, and manufacturing down 0.9%. So this is clearly very negative trends in the UK, and it really means that there will be more sort of negative things coming for the US as for the UK in terms of its economy, its standard of living, and so on. In EU, actually, industrial production is almost, call it unchanged, 0.2, so similar to US. So this is actually to the point that there is deindustrialization in Europe. Certainly, some industries definitely sort of dying or dead, more energy intensive, but they're apparently sort of vibrant situation where those dying industries were replaced by different. So basically, there's a shift pivoting into new, less energy intensive sort of manufacturing areas in Europe. So actually, Europe is able to actually hold on to its manufacturing base, basically so far. Then, sort of related to this, is we're going to switch a little bit to Asia, because it seems like the situation there is actually much more worse than in Europe or US, and I would say, I'm more focused on Asia Pacific. Very alarming situation, let's put it this way. So Japan, which is producing machines to manufacture things. Basically, it's a sort of derivative of industrial production. The orders there is negative 5.9% year on year. And then trade balance is negative for Japan. So as a whole, Japan seems like their business model is actually kind of broken. They had pretty much since the beginning of the war negative trade balance. So basically, they effectively, as economy, their expenses are higher than revenues, so they're basically losing money in all of what as a whole. If you look holistically at Japan, so again, sort of somewhat similar situation to China, except China is sort of, in terms of trade balance, in much better situation. But the same idea is that this export-oriented model, it seems to be broken, except Japan is specialized in exporting machinery and some high value add consumer goods, versus China is sort of exporting more like sort of some value added, but mostly like low value add consumer goods, basically, and some machinery to limited extent. But let's actually continue with South Korea, and their exports are negative 15% year on year, imports negative 14%. So again, and trade balance is negative. So similar situation to Japan. I don't have the sort of export-import numbers for Japan right now, but 15 and 14% for the country that sort of leaves off export. It's also very horrific numbers. Actually, similar situation actually in Singapore, which is also important trade hub in Asia. Let's actually move to this whole area. So it's here. It's as I said, important trade hub. They do some manufacturing, but their exports are also down like 15 roughly 15%, and imports are even more, 20% or close to 21%. So as you can see, the whole Asia Pacific is in terrible economic shape, and it's more that trade is disintegrating, and it's obviously destroys everything else, because trade is the beginning of generating profit and creating employment, manufacturing, and everything else. So it's sort of like this kind of like a black hole in Asia Pacific that's sort of spreading, and eventually it will hit Europe and the rest of the world and the US, and I would say let's call it Americas. So now let's talk a little bit about China. Their industrial production grew only 3.5%, which is for China is terrible number. Usually, at least 5, and then normally 6, 7, and used to be even 8. So this is really a bad number. Then retail sales also in China going down. So from 18% to 12%. So still growing. It's still decent number, but it's clearly slowing down. It's negative, and it's slowing down very quick. Sorry. However, there is one somewhat important point is that Chinese leadership managed to stabilize real estate prices there. They actually grew 0.1% year on year. So this real estate bubble is somewhat arrested for now. For how long, I don't know. But for now, they stabilized it. But at the same time, then consumer is, as you can see, is also in retreat in China. So basically, this whole, as I said, this kind of like a bubble complex in China that includes consumer, includes real estate, is either deflating or just barely sort of remaining above the water, or not even above the water. What I'm trying to say, it's not deflating. And so that part, as I said, is broken. And then, as you can see, all of this export and import activity in Asia Pacific also tells that export oriented Chinese business model is broken as well. So again, the situation in China is very explosive. Let's put it this way. Then let's actually switch a little bit, sort of more to topics of sort of military topics. So first, the Polish border patrol was shot at from Belarus when they were patrolling, going along the Polish-Belarus border. So again, this looks like there is chances that this conflict may expand. I'm not saying it's expanding, tomorrow, but it's very explosive situation between Belarus and Poland. And Belarus is just extension of Russia, right? So as I said many times before, similar to North Korea is extension of China, right? So that's sort of puppet countries, but they are useful because if Russia sanctions, Belarus not always sanctions, so it allows you to do certain things through Belarus. For the most part now, it's also pretty bad there as well, but still, and you have two voices in the United Nations. So that's the situation there. Then U.S. brought F-22 fighters to Jordan to counter Russian fighters there, because the U.S. is claiming that they behaving irresponsibly. Don't know what that really exactly means, but as you can see, the sort of intensity of all of this sort of negative events is going up. It's definitely not on decline. Then I just want to mention a little bit about this Taiwan and China situation. So first of all, you've probably seen this on the news that U.S. is preparing evacuation of its citizens from Taiwan in case of conflict. Then there were emergency weapons deliveries to Taiwan. I think it was a Stinger anti-air missile, and probably anti-tank as well there. I don't know all details, but it's all looks extremely similar to like the winter months before Russia invaded Ukraine. So it's unfortunately looks exactly the same. That the U.S. was trying to evacuate U.S. citizens from Ukraine. There were announcements, please leave, and so on. And then there were deliveries of javelins, except in Ukraine case it was more focused on javelins, not on stingers. So it's unfortunately looking very ominous, I would say, at least. So, and then another sort of line of confrontation is developing. It looks like China is building relationship with the Palestinian territories. I think the head of Palestinian territories visited China, met with the Chinese president, which really means a lot, given that's not even formally a state. So, and then it's no surprise because, China, Iran, it's one axis, Russia. So, and obviously Iran supports this Palestinian territories there. So, again, there's another sort of angle of conflict here developing. And I don't know if this is related to this development or not, but there are rumors circulating that Israel is selling 200 to 300 Merkava 2 and 3 tanks to Europe, and then sort of the rumor is that they will be delivered to Ukraine. Actually, we'll see if that's true or not. But this rumor circulating everywhere, all over Russia and so on. So I don't know, but does look that, because usually Israel is kind of like supporting more Russia than Ukraine generally. But I think sort of, I would say, forces of gravity force Israel to actually support of Ukraine, just because Russia is with China, Iran, and they effectively supporting Palestinian territory. So even sort of in this Near East, things are getting sort of, how to say, aligned, where different countries slowly taking sides with these two blocks. There are also, I think, some rumors that Egypt wants to join BRICS, which means that they're going to join, with the Russia, China, Iran. And then also India is very, very interesting case, where India is basically saying diplomatically no to US in terms of being on the side of sort of West in potential confrontation with China. And so India is at best is going to be neutral in this confrontation. And just for those who don't know, India has pretty strong ties with Russia. And they become even stronger because now they're getting also cheap Russian oil and so on. So that makes it even more sort of connection is even stronger and bond and so on. So this is a update on all of this strategic situation. Now let's switch to Ukraine. Let's talk at a high level what's going on. So first of all, about this failed offensive. I have to say it was extremely difficult thing to accomplish. Extremely difficult. Even more difficult than let's say Kursk battle, because it's no brainer for Russian command that the attack is going to happen there. They had a lot of time to build defensive line, to lay minefields. So they are sort of prepared, right? So they pulled troops there. They pulled actually the special forces brigades. Actually, this is somewhat less sort of recognized, is why a lot of this initial Ukrainian attacks were failed, because they were derailed by this special forces brigades, which are better than obviously regular Russian troops in terms of skills, knowledge, abilities, and just overall it's a better unit, much stronger fighting capabilities. In some ways, in terms of skills, it's probably even better than Wagner Group. As an organization, it's not as good, but in some ways it is on par, and maybe even in some ways better, some of them. So those brigades were not really recognized as the force that basically were part of the screening troops and they were extremely effective in destroying Ukrainian armored vehicles. Let's call them collectively armored vehicles, and so a lot of damage was done by those. And there's also small volunteer detachments, and so they're in a way very similar to Wagner Group and to the Special Forces brigades, and so they also inflicted significant losses on advancing Ukrainian forces. The sort of, how to say, saving grace on this is that mostly was just losses equipment-wise. Human side, it is not nearly as bad as it may look on the surface. Is actually pretty limited, which is, I think, is the most important part, because as long, the most potent weapon is people. That is what is not recognized in Ukraine, and I don't think it's fully recognized in the West. And by the way, in Russia as well. I would say where it's fully recognized, it's in Wagner Group, which I would also want to say it's. The more I think about this, I'd say this is calling them mercenaries is actually incorrect. I would say it's organization. It's because for Wagner Group, profit is not the main motive there, right? Projecting Russia's military power, political power is more important, and the profit is sort of supporting, basically, is to pay for the cost of projecting that power, right? So it's not truly private in some ways. It's managed with sort of like it's allowed, the head of it is allowed to manage it with like hands-off type of approach completely, and he managed to actually build extremely capable organization, but it's still part of the Russian government. I just want to make it clear, it's not some independent organization or something, or not like this private military company like in the West. That is not correct. It is part of the Russian government. It's just not part of Russian Ministry of Defense. And there's this conflict, as I explained before. And the strength of this organization is absolute meritocracy, and that's not happening in, let's say, in Ukrainian military, not in Russian military. To great extent, they are opposite of that, and that's a feature of the Soviet army. And I would say that West is better than the Soviet army, but it's not anywhere close to how it's done in the Wagner Group. And they are coming back to the front line on August 5. That was sort of announcement from the head of the group. They are coming back. So let's just kind of look again at the situation right now. So Ukrainian idea was, okay, let's distract Russian side, Russian command, force them to pull some Russian regular military units to Belgorod region to defend it. Some pressure here around Bakhmut to pull there, and then hopefully, use that, and then attack towards Azov Sea. And then, as I said, as I showed, I think in April, the map was attack across Dnipro River, and then basically move towards Crimea and liberate Crimea. So that was sort of idea. It failed from the very beginning because, first of all, Russian command did not bring any regular Russian military troops to Belgorod, so they didn't bring anything to Bakhmut to support, to kind of keep it there. So they also blew up this dam right? Which also prevented this operation attack from the western bank of Dnipro River. So they essentially strategically outsmarted Ukrainian command, even though I would say this whole idea was extremely stretched on the Ukrainian side, thinking that so many things will align perfectly. It was sort of unrealistic, and they did not align. And this is basically what I'm trying to say is like, for Ukrainian plan to work out, many things need to align perfectly, and just from probability perspective, that is nearly impossible to sort of happen, and obviously did not happen. And actually, if anything, it actually things perfectly did not align per Ukrainian sort of hopes and plans. And so then this offensive sort of was started, was done half-hearted and aborted, and I think it's a right move, because the way Ukrainian army is at this moment, it's not capable of succeeding at penetrating such defenses that what Russian side has there at this moment. It will just turn into absolutely bloody situation for Ukraine. And as I said before, the most important precious resource Ukraine has is people, not equipment. Equipment is just a piece of junk that's not worth human lives. And on a sort of, and then to support that, Ukraine is getting more of these Bradleys. What is actually Ukraine is getting, and which is actually, I would say, is a pretty good piece of equipment, is CV-90. It's IFE. It's not tank, but as IFE, it's pretty excellent. And Ukraine is getting like 50 from Sweden. They are already in Ukraine. I don't know if they already were assigned to whatever unit or not, but they are best in class, I would say. They and one of the reasons why they are is they have programmable projectiles or shells. They use 40 millimeter automatic cannons, and those programmable projectiles are extremely capable in terms of you can program them to explode over certain areas. You can take out with those attack helicopters. You can successfully you can easily clean out trenches. So this is actually excellent piece of weapon, and more cannon and more even shell. The whole value is in this shell. Then it's programmable that you can basically explode it where you need it, and it has a lot of shrapnel. So it's I would say can create huge advantage for Ukrainian troops if they properly used. Ukrainian troops are properly trained. No, there is a lot of ifs, but the tool is there. Whether it's going to be used properly by Ukrainian side, it's another question. I don't know. And then I don't even know if that feature is sort of enabled in those CV-90s. But in theory, this is extremely important tool, because it essentially kind of like allows you to clear out enemy infantry from very difficult sort of situations where otherwise you would need to send your own soldiers, and that leads to high losses. But this allows you to basically clear out trenches, any strongholds at a relatively safe distance. Nothing is perfect, but at least you have fair chance. So looking at this, I think the offensive, there will be sort of second attempt at offensive. Don't know when. Could be as soon as in couple days. Could be in 20 days, in 15. They have no sort of visibility to that, but that it's going to happen. is guaranteed, because, as I said, Ukraine probably lost about 20% of equipment. What it's getting already is essentially replacing and actually building up the number of tanks and IFVs. So again, the armored fist is going to be even stronger, and so we'll see. But again, as I said, as a whole, Ukrainian army is right now is not truly capable of breaching through the current Russian defenses. And maybe this CV90s are going to be some game changer that maybe will sort of tilt the probability closer to Ukraine to sort of in Ukrainian favor. We'll see, but otherwise, if there is not even those CV90s, even with Ukraine getting a little bit more equipment than it used to even have, it's simply not even close enough. There is not decisive technological advantage, and organizationally, Ukrainian army is no better than the Russian army by any means. Unfortunately, that's just a sort of sad reality. And as I said before, all of that training that's being done, it's unfortunately wasted a lot of wasted money, because it's all basically training for sort of wrong war, essentially. And I would say more training towards police operations rather than truly war. And the better use for that money would have been more equipment, more shells, those type of things, and actually creating finally some kind of UAV that's equivalent of our LAN-10, which is not there, and still not there, and so Ukrainian artillery is relatively disadvantaged. And actually another ironic situation is that, if you remember, about like a year ago, Ukraine received those kamikaze drones, UAV kamikaze drones from US. I think they were called Switchblade, and they were a total flop. But Russia has its own, and also from Iran, that they use extensively, and they're extremely successful at destroying high-value military assets on Ukrainian side. And by high-value military assets, I mean like self-propelled howitzers, the raiders, anti-air missiles, basically all of that, and like even like regular howitzers, 155 millimeter howitzers, or everything that sort of is the backbone of Ukrainian army, of Ukrainian defenses and offensive capabilities. So it's and I don't count them. But I just seeing the it's definitely creating a lot of pain. Let's put it this way. So again, don't know details why Russian kamikaze drones are so successful, and the Switchblade, I think it was Switchblade, they totally not successful. Don't know details for that, but just observation is that's a situation right now. Now let's just quickly walk through the front line, starting from north, and then we're going to do it in a clockwise fashion. So the situation along the state border is more or less the same. No major Ukrainian incursions into Belgorod region, which again highlights that this offensive is on the pause. And I actually forgot to mention, so the Russian command actually figured out solution to sort of protect the border. They brought in what they call Kadyrov troops. This is the dictator in Chechnya. That's nominally part of Russia, and they basically it's the whole. It's really a country within Russia. It's extremely militarized, as all dictatorships. So they brought in here, I think, 2 or 3 battalions of this Kadyrov troops. So they're gonna be now effective against any of these incursions, because RDK is much smaller. So effectively, this opportunity for the incursion at this point are extremely limited, unless this is actually otherwise you need to actually dedicate regular Ukrainian military units, which then really takes away from your ability to mount significant advantage on the Zaporizhya front line. Now let's jump to North Lugansk front line. Things here are quiet. There is this tactical attacks, but really otherwise this is quiet, sort of strategic, quiet area strategically. Now let's move to North Donbass front line. Things here are also quiet. There's some tactical Russian attack, but really otherwise, and there's also, didn't put it here, direction, there's another, was tactical attack, Orikhovo-Vasilivka, but really nothing major is happening. Here I actually put the arrow. Ukrainian side is also kind of like on a pause. So I think the Ukrainian military command, top command, is really rethinking like how to move, because the situation is extremely difficult, as difficult as it gets for Ukrainian military command in terms of ability to execute successful offensive. I'll be honest with you, I would not want to be in their position, given the cards that they have, and they have terrible cards. So let's move south. This is central Donbass front line. Again, most of it is quiet. The only area where they're, as I said, the direction of Russian president, they're trying to capture this Marinka, where they still struggling for, at this point, more than a year that they're trying to capture it. Now let's move to Zaporizhya front line. So this is a situation at this point. Totally no even any kind of advances here on the western side. The only sort of very limited success of Ukrainian side is elimination of this Velika Novosilka salient, and sort of a little bit pushing Russian troops towards south. But as I said, this is basically making a dent in screening position. Not even overcoming screening positions, right? So this is still screening position. This where it used to be. So it's still remnants of the screening positions still remain. They still, Russian side still maintaining strongholds before the main defensive line, and actually, really, the main one is number 3. So no major anything. The situation here was on pause for the both days. And sorry, I didn't actually update. Actually, I just left it the way it used to be, where it stopped. But basically, for this past 2 days, it's basically quiet here. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Bye bye.